Develop Effectively Game Devs, Tony Chan here, and welcome to episode 54 of Game Dev Loadout, where I chat with the best people in our industry 7 days a week. We will learn how they got started, the obstacles they faced, and the tools they used to reach success. And now let's chat with today's featured guest, Justin Fischer. Justin, it is game time. Are you ready?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Awesome. He is a veteran game producer and consultant at Agency Principal. He has worked on AAA games using IP from Disney, Marvel, and Pixar. He also blogs about how to improve video game production through better processes at breakingthewheel.com. So go ahead, Justin, give us a bit about your personal life and how you got started in the game industry.
Well, this is going to sound like a joke, but when I was growing up, I really had two career paths that I wanted to take. I either wanted to be a rock star or I wanted to make video games. And that sounds like a joke, but that's actually where my head was at. So I went to, my undergrad was in music engineering, because I really want to learn how to record myself, because Trent Reznor has always been my hero. And then the whole rock star thing didn't pan out, so I went with plan B and got into video games, and strangely enough, that worked out. And that's how I find myself on your podcast several years later.
That's funny how it's so different. A rock star or either become a video game developer.
Yeah, you can kind of infer what I was doing growing up from those two career options.
I'm curious, like, when did you, I guess, what age did you start making games?
The first game I ever made was, I think I was 8. My mom found there was a camp in Washington, D.C. where I was growing up, where they were teaching kids how to program, and like the first half of the day was you'd program a game, and the second half you'd go play tag or flag football and get out and get some sun. So I made a very basic shmup of just a guy with a jetpack. It was kind of like Section Z for the old Super NES or the old Nintendo, and it was just a very simple shmup. And then didn't really make any other games for quite a while. Mostly was focused on music, and then got back into game dev for professionally in 2007.
Nice. So one of your main area of expertise is agile software development, and I was wondering if you could tell us what is something we probably don't know about in that area that we should know.
To me, the where I get kind of frustrated with agile and Scrum in particular is it seems at times there's far too much attention to reproducing Scrum in a textbook manner versus doing what's best for the production or the culture of a company or for the particular project you're working on. I've had far too many conversations with professional agile developers when I will suggest some process change or some way of doing things where the response is, "Oh, that's not Scrum," as if that's some meaningful reply. So Scrum is a good platform, and it's a good baseline for developing effective processes, but it's not the end state. It's the means to the end. So I would advise anybody who's interested in agile to definitely study Scrum and understand it and try it, but don't just accept it that it's the ultimate way of doing anything. Just as a matter of course, you should try, you should explore it, and your particular situation, it might be the ideal, but there might be changes to the Scrum dogma that might actually work better for you. So I'd treat it as a medium for growing effective process versus the end state.
And for the people that might not know what Scrum is, can you give a bit more detail about that?
Sure. So Scrum came out of, and I apologize, I can't remember their name, but a couple of software developers who were using old, waterfall production techniques of you do this, then you do that, then you do that, then you do that, and it all works out perfectly, except it never works perfectly. So what they wanted to do was develop a process that was a little more reflective of how the real world works, and how allowing a lot of points to inspect what you're game making, if it's a website or a game or word processing software, to say like, okay, here we are now. Is this what are the next priorities based on what we know now? From what we know now, should we change course? Should we change our priorities? Should we change our direction? Let's test what we have. Let's learn from that. Let's inspect. Let's adapt. And Scrum is a framework for achieving what's known as Agile. Agile itself is really just a 4-line manifesto. That's really all it is. It's sort of a philosophy of, people are more important than tools, and responding to change is more important than following a plan. And Scrum is a framework for trying to achieve Agile. So it's, you have a concept of sprints. You have some contained amount of time through which you're getting work. In that sprint, you commit to a certain amount of work that's going to get done. You do it, you review the work, and then you decide, okay, based on all the other stuff we want to get done, what are the next priorities? What do we want to get done during the next sprint? And the key way I think that Scrum and Agile in general differs from a traditional production mindset is that, in a traditional production, you're trying to say, how long will it take us to get through all this stuff? And Scrum is more saying, what can we get done in the time we have left? So, in any project, you're going to say, okay, there's X amount of work we want to get done. We think it's going to take 2 years, or it's going to take 18 months. And then you try to squeeze all that work into that 2 years, whether or not it actually fits. And generally what happens is you end up with 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag, as the expression goes. What Scrum is saying is, okay, here's all the amount of work we want to do, and here's the amount of time in which we want to work on it, and here are the priorities. And once we've cleared those priorities out, we're going to take a look again at the product and what we think it should do, what we think it should be, where we think it should go, and then we're going to establish the next priorities, and then we're going to establish the next ones. And really, the goal is that ideally every sprint you should have something you could sell in some state. Whether it's a word processor that all it can do is put letters on a screen. Well, that's something you could potentially sell, and that's something you could show to somebody. You could get feedback on. You could test. But it's an inspection point. That's sort of the key element of Scrum and sprints, is that you want to have regular points where you're stopping, looking at what you've made, and then making a decision on whether it's the right thing, versus just staying nose to the grindstone for 2 years and then pulling your head above water and saying, oh, I meant to make a submarine, but I think I've actually made a Cuisinart, and that, or I've made a submarine, but it actually just sinks and it doesn't go anywhere. So that's what's key about Agile in general and Scrum in particular. And I hope all that made sense.
It's good that you do want to, check your priorities again every now and again, not wait until the end to do that.
Yeah, no, it's very key. Don't assume you're right at the beginning, because one of the key elements of Agile is the notion that the irony of project planning is that you are planning a project when you know the absolute least about it, which is at the beginning. And so Agile is trying to account for that and saying, okay, here's your best guess. Now go build something and test it and figure out what it is, and then take your next best guess. But don't assume that that your guess at the beginning is right. It's probably not. And it's the same thing with, if you look at startups. Startups have what they call a pivot, where you're making, you think you're making an ice cream, a company that makes really good ice cream, but then you find people don't actually like your ice cream, but dogs like your ice cream. So now you're going to pivot and make dog ice cream, that sort of thing. Where it's the same thing in Scrum, where you want to constantly build, test, adapt in that sort of cycle.
Yeah, things are constantly changing. You just never know. And yeah,
things change, or you just might be wrong, which is actually probably more likely than not.
Now, let's go ahead and take this on a more personal level, because it sounds like you got a ton of experience of dealing with these problems. What was the worst moment of your career, that one moment that's still vivid in your mind? And be very detailed and tell us that story.
The worst one for me didn't really have to do with Scrum or Agile. What happened was, my studio was helping with another studio out with a big project, and we were pretty well embedded in finishing that project. And it was a major initiative, and lots of money, lots of risk, lots of attention. And they asked, they were in a different state, different city. They asked for one of the developers I was helping out to go live out there for a couple weeks, and really just help try to finish the project up. And that's the kind of thing, I learned a long time ago that as a leader, you never want to ask anybody to do anything that you're not willing to do. And I found myself in a position where I was asking one of my team members to go out and do something that I couldn't do, because I had a brand new kid who was I think he was 6 months old at the time. I couldn't really leave my wife alone with him for that long. And I was also in grad school. I couldn't really stop going to classes. And I felt kind of sick to my stomach. And the other part that was bothering me is that it was the team that was working on this major project was just crunching to oblivion. Health of employees was not a major concern, because this huge initiative just had to go out. So they were just willing to kind of grind anybody to a pulp. So I was sending somebody that I considered a friend into a situation where I couldn't share the burden. I couldn't go with her. I couldn't run interference. And so I felt like I was both sending somebody into something that I didn't like, or I didn't think she was going to be treated as a human being. She was going to be another cog in the machine to finish this game. But it also was something that I couldn't go with her, and I couldn't be there as part of the team. So, it was sort of hitting me on two levels. So that was that just was just sort of a low point for me of seeing my friend go off to do something difficult and not being able to go with her.
Oh man, I hope it's just crunch time, so I'm pretty sure when she went there was definitely tough. So it's like, I guess this could help other leaders out there, that's delegating work to another person. What do you want to make sure we take away from that experience when we're like delegating work or putting someone on a certain project?
I mean, to me, you want to, again, never ask anybody to do anything you're not willing to do yourself. If you're not willing to stay late, don't ask people to stay late. If you're not willing to work on a weekend, don't ask people to work on a weekend. If you're not willing to cancel or move a vacation, don't ask anybody to do that. You shouldn't ask anybody to do that anyways. That's just a real jerk thing to do. But definitely, if you're not willing to bite that bullet, don't ever ask anybody to do that. So to me, that's sort of baseline 1 for leadership. Baseline 2 is accountability goes both ways in leadership. It's not just that the people you lead are accountable to you. You're accountable to them. You are accountable to provide them clear goals, clear expectations, clear timelines. It is your job to provide clear context, clear direction to them. And if something goes wrong, your first question should not be, what did this person screw up? It should be, what did I screw up? If I'm ever in a position where I feel like I'm getting upset at somebody that I feel like they didn't perform the way I would have liked, my first question is always like, okay, what could I have done better? Because unless I was perfect, I can't yell at them. And I'm never perfect. So that's why I don't like yelling at people. For me, the important thing is say, okay, bring the person aside, talk them through what happened, what could have gone better, but also explain, okay, here's what I could have done better. I could have been more clear in my expectations. I could have checked in with you more often to make sure that things were running on schedule. I could have given you a more clear timeline, whatever it was. But that to me is imperative to being a leader, is that you have to offer your own accountability to anybody who you're managing, who you're leading. And then beyond that, it's just making sure people understand what it is you want. They're not mind readers. It's not fair to give people ambiguous direction and then expect specific outcomes. That's just not a reasonable thing.
I love that. Yeah, take responsibility, give clear communication, and do not ask someone to do something that you're not willing to do. And so now that you're more experienced and much better now, what do you think was like the best investment you've made? And it can be investment of money, time, or energy. And how did you decide to make that investment?
To me, lately, it's just been, and this is going to be really ambiguous, or amorphous. I'm not sure what the right word is, Tony, but just investing in understanding how my own head works. And anybody working in games, everybody experiences anxiety or experiences imposter syndrome or doubt, or everybody's got their own hangups. And there was a period of my life where I took all these emotions very personally and treated them as if they were fact, and that led me to some unhealthy moments where if anything went wrong, then it all came, the world came crashing down. Like things had to be going right, or I would just beat myself up. And that really came to a head when I actually ended up getting laid off. I was working my studio was owned by Disney, and they had a strategic change, and they shut my studio down. And that really was a gut punch to me. And it, with the benefit of hindsight, I realized that part of the problem was that I wrapped up way too much of my identity in being a game developer. And I didn't have my own baseline of strength and understanding and resilience to rely upon. I just had wrapped myself up in my job. So, with a little more wisdom, a little more experience, and a little more reading about things like mindfulness, meditation, how brains process, what emotions are, it's a lot easier for me to say, okay, I'm doing something like I'm being interviewed on a podcast with you right now, right? This is my first time ever being interviewed on a podcast. So, part of my brain is really anxious about that. All the things could go wrong. I could say something really stupid, and then it'll be on the internet forever. And then, Tony's going to tell all his friends what a jerk I am. And recognize, a previous version of me would have freaked out and just said, "Oh, Tony, I can't do it. I'm feeling sick." But now it's like, okay, my anxiety is just trying to tell me that I just need to focus and that I need to be aware that this is, something I need to take seriously. But it's telling me that I'm doing something new, and that's actually a healthy thing. So trying to understand my emotions in a more, not clinical, but a more just sort of holistic manner of, okay, they're emotions. They're not fact. They're not reality. They're just the way my brain is trying to signal things to me and how my brain is trying to tell me things. So trying to just get a grip on my own mindset and understanding, things like imposter syndrome and being hard on myself. They're just messages I'm trying to tell myself, and being able to understand them in that way makes it a lot easier for me to deal with emotions. And now that I'm doing something kind of nuts and starting my own company, which is its own ball of kind of scariness, as I'm sure you're finding out, being able to understand your anxiety and push through it and kind of and encapsulate the emotions you're experiencing as messages versus fact is super important. And it also helps me, it helps me work against my own weaknesses. So, if you tell me, if you're like, hey, Justin, can you go turn off the sprinkler in 15 minutes? I guarantee you'll forget. Now, it's a point in my life where that would have made me really mad. Like, God, I'm such an idiot. I didn't turn off the sprinklers. But now it's just like I accept the fact, okay, my brain just is not good at keeping track of things. I just get focused on something else. So instead of getting angry, I just say, okay, I'm just going to set an alarm for 15 minutes. And then my alarm will go off and I'll go, oh, hey, yeah, I need to go turn off the sprinklers. So just accepting the way my brain works versus getting mad about it. And then just finding ways to work with that and be productive within that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm actually going through the same thing you're going through. It's basically, I guess you could say you're becoming more aware of yourself. You choose, or you make the choice of how you're going to react to something.
Totally.
Yeah, of course, you hopefully you react to it in a positive and good way.
Well, yeah, but that's true. But even if you don't, just like if something goes wrong at work and you get upset, or you're working on a build and Unity crashes, getting upset. One way to look at it is like, oh God, I don't have control of my emotions. Another way to look at it is like, okay, these are just emotions. This is just a human experience, and it's okay that I'm mad. I just need to understand that that I don't have to be owned by this emotion. I can experience it. I can acknowledge it for what it is, and then I can calm down and move on. And I find if you can acknowledge your emotions that way, it's a lot easier to forgive yourself for those lapses, versus saying like, oh, I have anger problems, and I'm just an angry, terrible person. Saying, okay, this is my emotional experience. It doesn't have to define who I am, and I can forgive myself for these moments of anger. And I instead of beating myself up about it, I can just accept that that's a human experience and I can move on from it. And as I get older and do more difficult and stressful and anxiety provoking things, that sort of mentality is increasingly helpful.
Yeah. And once you acknowledge it as well, as soon as you acknowledge it, you immediately take the next step to do something instead of like, keep on procrastinating about it. So that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. Like, it's like, somebody's trying to lose weight and they go on a crash diet for a week, and then their resolve breaks and they have a cookie. Now, one way to look at it is say like, oh, my resolve broke and that's a human thing. And I just had this one cookie, whatever, let's just keep going. But a lot of people say like, oh God, I failed. And then it's just downhill from there. So that being able to pivot from, I'm a terrible person because I ate this cookie, to, okay, I slipped up, I forgive myself, I'm moving on. That to me, I used to be the former person and increasingly I'm the latter. And that's, and the more complicated things you do in your life, the more mistakes you're going to make. So the faster you can bounce back from error, the easier time you're going to have doing something complex like making a video game or running a company or managing people.
I love that. Yeah. Just change that perspective is the way you take it in. Awesome. The show isn't over yet, Game Devs. We have reached a crunch time, basically the phase that is dreaded, but we are here to overcome it. Basically, Justin, I will ask you quick questions and you'll be giving us a ton of valuable information in return. Are you ready to crush it and release the show?
We'll find out, Tony.
What was holding you back from joining the game industry?
Initially, it was just hesitation. It was sort of, kind of related to what I was talking about before. Like everything had to be perfect. Like I had to have this perfect demo reel. Like initially I thought I wanted to work in sound design. So I had to have this perfect demo reel, which have, of course never happened because I was always being too meticulous, too hard on myself. And when I finally just said like, hey, can I get an internship somewhere? That's finally what kind of got me over the hump. And then it was, the same thing that blocks everybody from getting into game dev, which is you can't get experience without a job and you can't get a job without experience. So I just had to keep knocking on doors. It took me about 6 or 7 months of continuous effort before I talked my way into a production internship. And that's how I finally got my foot in the door.
That's great. You didn't stop. You kept going. That was awesome. What's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Increasingly, I am more and more organized, which is important because I got more and more stuff going on. So, I mean, I used to be very organized at work and terribly disorganized in my personal life, and that didn't make any sense to me. And I was like, well, why can't I just manage my life the same way I manage things at work? So, I run a task board for all the stuff I got to get done. I prioritize it. I keep track of it. I run my own backlog of things I need to get done, and I divide it between work and life and side projects and all that. And just being disciplined like that about all the stuff I need to get done. It helps me keep track of all the stuff I do get done. So if I'm ever like, oh God, I'm so lazy, it's like, no, I have all this stuff done this week. What am I talking about? And also just like, okay, I know here's all the stuff I got to get done. Here's all I need to get done for, and here's the priority for it. That to me has been, especially this year, it's been getting a company spun up. It's been a huge game changer for me.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think, and this is kind of a cop-out because I didn't receive it directly, but it's one of my favorite quotes ever, is Woody Allen said 80% of success is just showing up. And when I think back to all of my biggest successes, both personally and professionally, it's because I showed up somewhere. It's because I just went for it, even though I was anxious or didn't think what I had was good or perfect, or I was worried about the outcome, or I thought people might make fun of me, or, I didn't know if it would work. And anytime I got over my own fear and just went and did it, not that it always worked out, but I always felt better about it, and it was always a good experience, either in and of itself or as far as a learning experience. And that's my best successes didn't come from doing things that made me comfortable. So the willingness to show up even when you're tired, when you don't think it'll work, when you don't know what to do, when you're just sick of looking at it, when you don't think you're well enough, you're prepared enough. That to me is key above anything else to really seeing success, especially if you want to do something off the beaten path, like make video games.
Yeah, and game development is not easy, but if you're willing to take that risk to go forward and, reach out to publishers maybe to help publish your game, or just hook up with strangers to make games, it's like, it is hard, but as long as you keep doing it and keep going, something good could come out of it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, especially, 24-month project, you're making a big AAA game. Nobody's enthusiastic about the game after 24, 36, whatever, even 18 months. Like, nobody's still enthusiastic at that point. It's entirely about, can you keep showing up to work and keep hitting buttons until the thing's done? And I've had that conversation many times where it's like, I'm in the middle of beta and I'm kind of crunching, and it's, can you wake up? Yeah. Can you get out of bed? Yeah. Can you go to work? Yeah. All right, go to work. And it was really the job was just like, can you keep showing up until the game is done? So sometimes it's really just what it boils down to.
Oh, what resources should we game devs use?
I would say, I feel like game devs are too incestuous as far as trying to learn stuff. We look to each other too much, and there's a world of information from other industries that is totally applicable to games. And when I went to grad school, I have an MBA, and what you learn there is that every business steals from every industry steals from every other industry. They all look to each other for ideas, and I think that's just as applicable to games. I think there's so much we can learn from experts in anything from manufacturing to entrepreneurship to psychology. So I'd say if you want an interesting view of the forefront, the cutting edge of people researching business and psychology and economics and everything, just go to the Harvard Business Review and just sign up for their daily newsletter. You'll get a daily tip of the day, which are always solid advice that either I've learned professionally just by doing it, or I've learned by studying it. But it's always really interesting stuff. And they compile short, 60-page kind of trade paperback books of anything from finance to accounting to team dynamics, entrepreneurship, anything you can read. So, and they have tons of really great, well-researched case studies of businesses that have faced the same kind of decision points that we face in games. So that sort of stuff is super useful and can really make a difference in how you make games, how you lead, how you run a team, how you track metrics, how you establish features, how you prioritize, how you run advertisements, anything you can think of.
And that's the Harvard Daily, you said?
The Harvard Business Review.
Okay. Awesome.
Harvard Business School has a very famous think tank, and it's well worth the time to read it. Also, if I can do a shameless plug, if you go to my blog, breakingthewheel.com, there's a resources page where I put up every relevant book I can find that I've read that I think is useful for game dev. So, again, I'm sorry, shameless plug, but have a peruse of that. There's a lot of books that I think are really worth your time some are longer reads than others, some are drier reads than others, but there's tons of interesting information out there.
I would definitely link those up, so I appreciate that. Now, this next question is a bit of a doozy, so take your time if you need to. Imagine you woke up the next morning in a brand new world and you knew no one. You still have all the experience and knowledge you currently have today. Your food and shelter is taken care of and you have a laptop. What would you do step by step on the path to become a great game developer?
I would I would just find, like, if there's a game design I have in my head, what I want to do first is find, what is the critical assumption of this game? Like, what is the assumption I'm making in this design that's in my head that all other assumptions depend on? So, like, if you think of Super Mario Brothers, the color, the art design, the music, fire flower, none of that matters if the one critical assumption that running and jumping is fun, if that isn't true. Like that, if that's not true, the rest of the game doesn't matter. So figure out what that one critical assumption of your game is, and then build the fastest prototype you can, or I would build the fastest prototype I could to try to verify that, to test that assumption. And if it proved true, find the next most critical assumption, test that, and build up a design iteratively like that. And just focus on one assumption, one like sort of key core thing at a time until I felt like I had a real solid core game loop, and then move on to build out a vertical slice and then build a game from there.
Heck yeah. Like pick like one idea, keep testing it out, get that user feedback, and if it doesn't work, try again. That's all there is to it. We have reached the end. Go ahead and give us a parting piece of guidance and how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
So yeah, you can find me. I'm on Twitter easily enough. Justin Fischer. 2 underscores. Don't go with the 1 underscore Justin Fischer. He hasn't been on Twitter in years, I don't think. So there's 2 underscores and there's a C in Fischer, Fischer. Go to the blog, breakingthewheel.com, putting stuff up there, try to put something up there every week. And you can also reach me on my personal email, Fischer Justin D, as in Douglas, at gmail.com. So FischerJustin @gmail.com. Don't forget the D, because then it'll go to this guy in Utah who gets a lot of my... No, seriously, I get a random call one day. This guy's like, hey, this is going to sound weird, but my name's also Justin Fischer, and I got a lot of your emails. I was like, oh. So, yeah. He'll forward it to me. He's a nice guy, but it's faster if you include the D, though. Okay, somebody's going to take that quote out of context, but anyways.
Awesome. Hit him up, Game Dust. Justin is willing to help you out, help us become better game developers. Justin, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And for that, we are truly grateful, and we will catch you next time.
All right, thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Game Dust, for listening, and remember that knowledge is only potential power. Execution is the game. I am so excited to announce our first sponsored giveaway with Game Dev Underground, where a winner can get a free 1-hour consultation with the founder, Tim Rusbeck. So if you have any questions on building and launching your game, get on this giveaway ASAP. This is a $1,000 value, and it can be yours. All you have to do is go to the show notes page at GameDevLoadout.com and sign up for my email list. That's it. So until then, keep on making great games, and I will catch you on the next episode. Bye.